You today with APA, first half an hour, and then second part of today's workshop is paraphrasing. So the purpose of today's workshop is to understand what is APA, why do you have to do that, what happens if you don't know how to paraphrase, so what are the consequences of incorrect paraphrasing. So who has an idea of what APA is? Anybody would like to?
Is that like a referencing of the book, like if you're writing a report, where you got the information from?
Yes, so exactly, it's one of the forms of APA referencing a book. So basically, when you are doing research for your assessments, for your reports, for your essays, literature reviews, any type of assessment, you need to acknowledge the author, who is the responsible person for that idea, for that text, for that article, for those words. APA is an academic requirement. So basically, when you are studying at this level, in all universities around the world, you need to follow a referencing system. And there are different types of referencing. So we have Oxford, Harvard, different styles, legal style of referencing, and then we have American Psychological Association, that stands for APA, and that's the style of referencing we use here in Total Online and in most of the universities in New Zealand. So let me just say this is the easiest one as well, so you guys are having an advantage at the moment. When you're referencing, first tip when you're doing your work, when you are doing your research, so the first step of any type of assessment is a very good and solid research. So you imagine that you are at the library downstairs and you discover this amazing book from this author or this article that says exactly what you want to say for your teacher to read. You will use that information. So the first thing you should do is acknowledging all the sources of information. Make a note of the title of the article and the author of the articles, because you're going to need it later on. So if you have a Word document that you are working with, or Google Docs, doesn't matter, just type on that document the notes of title of the article, name of the author, and also the website address if you are looking for specific websites. Because tomorrow you might come back to campus and continue on doing research on that specific item, and you found, this afternoon you were studying, you found a really good website, but tomorrow you cannot find that same website. So it's really, really good to come back and have that information copy-pasted at the end of your assessment. Okay, so you acknowledge, when you are referencing, you acknowledge other people's ideas, other people's work. So you've heard about that famous singers and writers, they copyright their work. So they legally protect their work, saying that so if you want to use or sing the cover of a song of Madonna, you can only use a cover, and you have to acknowledge that that song is originally a song from Madonna. Otherwise, you can get into legal trouble, and that's not very good. Same for studies, same for academic purposes. So if you don't acknowledge other people's work ideas, you might get yourself into a bit of trouble, and you may be in a situation of plagiarism. Maybe not because you want it, but because you don't know how to reference. So why do we reference? To acknowledge other people's ideas or words, to show to your tutor and your readers where you got your ideas from, also to show that your work is based in real facts, and that you are honest and you're doing a great, great job by being truthful to a good research and acknowledging all the sources. Then, also, it is very, very important to reference to avoid a situation like this. So sometimes when you submit your assessments via Moodle, you have a little app, or I don't know, it's an app. It's called Turnitin. So it automatically detects how many words are your words and how many words belong to another source. So when you have a matching result at the end, it says it has got 20-30% of words that are not your own words, because they can understand if you are using other people's words without referencing properly. So let's do a little bit of an exercise here. So if you are using a copy text from another source, do you think you need to reference?
Yes.
Let me ask you another question. When you include a table or data or even a diagram from another source, do you think you need to reference?
Yes.
So a picture, a table, a diagram from a book that you are using in your assessments, you need to reference. Because it's not your own diagram, it's not your own table, it's not your own picture. Sometimes students love to use beautiful cover pages for their report, and they copy-paste a beautiful picture. Let's say it's a report on travel and tourism, and they have a picture of Mount Maunganui with a cruise, a huge, awesome cruise. They have to APA if that picture is not yours and you got it from a website. Also, another exercise. Do you need to mention a fact which is commonly known?
No.
Why not?
It's common knowledge.
Common knowledge. You don't need to APA common knowledge. Yes. So that's where the gray area starts. Because if I say Second World War finished in 1945, do you think you have to mention APA references? Everybody knows that the Second World War finished in 1945. But if you don't remember that date, if you don't know, and if you are writing your report and you're not too sure about in what year Second World War finished, then you have to Google it. You need to mention that information. Okay? It's better to APA than not, in case you're not too sure. Because you're not going to lose marks for referencing, but you may lose marks for not referencing. Let's say that you write about your own opinions in a specific topic. You need to APA?
No.
And you present the results of your own experiment or survey. You don't need to APA those results. Maybe you need to acknowledge them at the end, let's say, of your report in an appendix, but you don't need to APA. Okay, referencing has got two parts, and you always have to do both of them. So referencing is incomplete if you don't do the in-text citation and if you don't do the reference list. So the in-text citation is when you're writing your assessment, you're, let's say, using the words of Einstein. Yeah? And then you need to paraphrase Einstein. For example, use the same words as Einstein using that very famous theory, but you want to put it under your words. This is called paraphrasing. Cheryl's going to cover that. But you need to do an in-text citation acknowledging Einstein as the author of that idea. Is it making sense?
Mm-hmm.
But you also need to go down to the end of your assessment and create a reference list at the end. And they both are different. So first we're going to cover how to do in-text citation, then we're going to cover how to do APA. The good thing about APA is that you have this handout. And for online students, all of the courses on Moodle have this handout, so you can also always find this in Hakoawe online in the study skills area. And there is a little section that is called APA referencing, and you can find information about this. If you don't have this in your Moodle page, you can always find it down there in the library. Ask us, or we can always ask your tutor to email us and have this on their Moodle page. Okay? Because this is the secret key for perfect APA. What they did here, when they created this handout, they created several examples on how to do in-text citation, which is the middle column, and then the reference list. So basically, you just need to look at this and do exactly what they've done in the examples when you're doing your own reference lists. Let's have a look at a specific example. So, if we're covering in-text citation, we need to have in-text citation to do in-text citation when we quote, when we summarize, and when we paraphrase somebody else's work. So, is there any questions so far about this? So when you're quoting somebody, you need to do in-text citation. Also, when you are summarizing a text, an article, also you need to acknowledge the author. And when you are paraphrasing Einstein, for example, you need to do APA. How do you do it? An example. So all the in-text citations use the author's surname, only the surname for in-text citation, and then the surname is always in brackets, okay? Followed by a comma. The year it was published, the page number only if you're doing a direct quote, and always brackets at the start, at the end. I'll show you an example. So if you have a book, let's say this is a book that you're using for your reports, and you have 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5 authors, but you only mention their surnames. The book was published in 2012, and that's a direct quote from page 276. This is one of the ways of doing in-text citation. So let's create an exercise here. Let's say that my colleague Cheryl published a book last year called, I'm going to get you into trouble, Finance in New Zealand, because she loves finance. And it was published in 2016 last year. And it was published here when we were still Bay of Plenty Polytechnic. This is our exercise for today. So what I'm going to ask you, after showing you how to do in-text citation and APA, is to play a little bit with Cheryl's book. So, just going to show you other examples of how to do good APA. When you're starting, you can start by the sentence you're paraphrasing, saying that Facebook can connect students with peers and teachers. This is a sentence from a guy whose surname is Duffy, from a book or an article. We don't need to know those details. That was published in 2011. You also can say that this same author states or contents that Facebook can connect students with peers and teachers. The difference here is that here you start the sentence by acknowledging the author, and you just need to put the date in brackets. If you are doing text citation at the end, you put the date in brackets, also the surname and the comma. It's one way of doing it. But sometimes you have two authors. So what you do, you use hide in this format, use the surnames of the authors, the date. Or you also can do Pasquarello Terenzini, use and, fully written, and just put the date in brackets. So these are the two ways of doing in-text citation. There is another way, and we have 5 authors here. So if you don't want to mention them all, you just mention the name of the first author of the book, the surname actually, and all is the Latin that stands from and other. So you don't have to keep mentioning all the other 5 authors, you just have to mention the date to make it easier. When you are doing direct quotes, you need to pay attention of your way of doing the in-text citations, because a direct quote is when you use exactly the same words that you found on an article, on a book, on a website. So let's say you're doing a report of business management, and you go to the specific website, and you find that 3-sentence 3-lines paragraph, they really are, it's amazing for you to state your point of view. So you want to use that to, make your argument stronger. And you copy paste. When you copy paste, what do you need to put in front of
The speech marks.
the quotation marks? That's why sometimes we do this all the time, good old language. But you always need to put it at the start of the sentence, at the end, and after the quotation marks, that's where you acknowledge the authors. in the style of in-text citation. This is not the list at the end. This is while you're writing the text. So you need to do both things.
Oh, so you only do it right at the end when it's like a direct quote.
No. So when you have a direct quote, again, you're quoting. When do you have to in-text citation? When you're quoting, when you're summarizing, or when you are paraphrasing. Because we are having a direct quote here, we need to do in-text citation. Because if you read this, imagine that you're the tutor marking this assessment. You know already that that article was written by Kritz, Cronin, and Jung in 2009. And you really need to put the page number. But I don't know if this is a website. I don't know if this is a book. I don't know if this is an article in a newspaper. There is no way you can put that information while you're writing. Otherwise, it will be too much information. So you only put all those details at the end. So in text citation, you only use the surnames and the date, and page if you are doing a direct quote. Okay? For example, if this was a website of Air New Zealand, you will have Air New Zealand, 2017. That's the date of the website. And then you don't have pages in the website. So instead of page, you will use para, stands for paragraph, paragraph 3. So the tutor goes back to that website and looks at paragraph 3 and knows exactly that the sentence you're copy and pasting is this one. I'll teach you how to do the reference list at the end. Any other questions about this? Is it clear so far? Good. This is still about direct quotes, but sometimes you have direct quotes that have more than 40 words. When you have more than 40 words in the direct quote, you don't need quotation marks. You just need to create some space, indented spaces in the text, and that's what you need to do. The only thing you need to do to acknowledge this as a direct quote. And of course, then you need to put the brackets, surname, comma, year in the paragraph or the page name. Finally, we're going to talk about reference lists. That's what students always do at the end of the assessment when they are almost finishing, so it's a really good sign when you get into the reference list. And that's why it's so important to keep posting or copy-pasting notes on your assessment of what are of the resources you used for your research, so to help you to do the reference list of the end. So if you go here, by using this template, you can see on the left side that you have different styles of sources, like newspapers, books, with one author, two authors, and so on. And then you have, in the middle, an example of how to do any text citation. So you can follow this as a guide when you're writing. And also the end of it, where you find an example of the reference list. We're going to cover this part now, the reference list. Okay. So I just got an example here from a book. And for this specific workshop, we have two examples, which is what students use more when they're doing the research. So what do you do when you have to study your research? Well, how do you start researching?
Google it.
Yeah, ask Dr. Google. Yes. So using websites is really, really very common when you're doing your research, but also going down there to the library, finding really good books. The tutors usually want primary research, secondary research. So when you're doing secondary research, it means that you're using websites, books, articles, and so on. I'm not going to cover newspaper articles or magazines, just a book and a website. And then you'll know how to use this, and then you will know how to follow the examples for the other type of sources. Right. So this is the book. So the rule for reference list of a book is to start by the author's surname. We're going to play a little bit with by a guy called Kirkpatrick, but we have a comma after the surname, and we have a dot after the initial. So it probably is David or Daniel. It doesn't matter. You just have to put surname, comma, initial, dot. Open brackets, the year of the book, first edition, close brackets, dot. And then you have to write the title of the book in italics. That's why you have the title here. In italics, it's the part that is, italics is when you do that like that. Okay? The Pisa Tower, you know it's in Italy, but maybe helps you to remember that. And then you have the place of publication, which is usually the city and the country, city, comma, country, followed by a colon, which is these two little dots, and then finally you have your publisher. That's how you reference the book at the end of your book. There is another rule for books, which is, and now we're going to cover websites. Okay? Imagine that 50% of your research relates to websites, where you got your information from. And there are two types of websites like you have in your handout. So if you want to have a look to your handout, just to make sure you have the right example, here on websites, you have website with an author, and then you can have a website with a corporate author. So website with an author is, for example, with Cheryl, created our own website to develop a theories about finance in New Zealand. So you will look at Cheryl Phillips' website, saying that you will first start by putting the name of the author followed by a dot. Sorry, this is wrong. I did this morning, not paying too much attention. Actually, not being perfectionist, but that's what we need to do when we're creating API. Name of the author followed by a dot. It's kind of a surprise, this slide. Okay, let's do it again. I didn't say it anyway. Followed by a dot. Followed by the initials, the title of the article in italics. And then you write retrieved from and copy paste the URL. So it looks something like this. So imagine that Gomers, Daniel, Julian,
Oh yeah, this must be a comma. And then it's a dot.
no, actually it's a comma. It's correct.
It is, yeah.
The initials, because this is
Yeah.
one author. So all good here. The other one is wrong. So, but so the surname, comma, initials, like the book with the dot, the year in brackets. Then you have the title of the article that you're reading in italics, and then you just have to acknowledge that copy paste the URL retrieved from blah blah blah. Then the tutor comes here, clicks, and this one he sees your reference list and goes back to that same website that you said, check your information or how you did your paraphrasing. Is it making sense?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, maybe I'll show you an example of how to do this. When you have a corporate authors, for example, are on an organization, let's say Toa Mai or Greenpeace New Zealand. So it's just not one single person creating a website. Usually you look different websites with corporate authors. So you start with the name of the website or the author, followed by a dot, initials, dot, title of the article you're reading about in italics. Same rule, copy, retrieved from, copy paste the URL, and then it looks like this. So imagine you were, I should have the date here. Okay, I have to fix this website. Greenpeace New Zealand, no date.
Oh, so
If you cannot find the date on the website, followed by a dot. Wales as the title of the article, and then retrieved from, and that's where you can find this information. That's how you do a website. Any questions?
Yeah.
Yes.
So, if I've got the website, because I have handed in a report and not referenced properly, the website I've just realised. reasonably sure that the website's got an author, but where do I find that information?
Okay, I'll show you. It's a good question.
Versus
Let's
corporate.
see if let's see, Todd. Turn the other way around. Okay, let's see. We're going to look for information and for mine. It's a good website. Okay. So that's the website of our institution. Oh, it's quite nice. I haven't had a chance to come here. Maybe this is not a good one because it's too dark.
Oh, well, if you just type in LOFT,
LOFT.
make it .co.nz or something, it's a food one.
This one? Loft?
Oh, that would do, yeah.
Okay, let's have a look. That's beautiful. We have some fashion here. So, what do you think? How would you do this website? How would you reference this one? Where do you find information about the date, the name of the website? So this is a corporate website, right? Not an individual website. We always scroll down until we find the copyright sign. It's very small. You probably are not able to see it. Copyright 2017, which gives us the date of the website. This one has got a date. Some websites don't have a date, so you open brackets, write n.t. close brackets means no date. And then you don't have the title of the name of the author here, but you know already that this is called Loft. So it will be something like, let's do it here. Finish with a website. So we do something like Loft 2017. And let's say we are looking at the article called Venom Crush. Dot. And then this is italics. Doesn't look like it is. And then we look, right, retrieve, and copy paste the URL. So I would come here if I was a student, copy paste this into my Word document and have that done. Just two final tips for APA. When we are doing the list at the end, we need to make sure that our final list is in alphabetic order. Also that you created did the indenting. Also the year in brackets and the ending indent to look like this. So how would you do it? Let's say this is your Word document where you are developing a assessment and you are doing the reference list at the end. Okay? And you make it all nice, pretty, blah, blah, blah. And then you already have your lists in alphabetic order, and then you select the text and press Ctrl T, and you have an indentation done. Yeah. Ctrl T. So this is how your reference list should look like. So you have the alphabetic order and the indenting by pressing Ctrl T, selecting the text and pressing Ctrl T. And that's it. I'll ask you if you have any questions. Yes?
I was just wondering about the alphabetical order. What if there's more than one author?
You always start is there any book here? No.
One on your reference list.
Yes, look. That's a book with several authors.
Okay.
So we have John Feng, let's say, is the first author. And then you have Fetzer, Feng, M, and Ling. So I just put it in this author. This handout is really, really good because you have an example of that. You have book just at the top here, and you have an example of a book with one author, two authors, three authors, and you have the example here. So you will be fine if you follow this when you're doing your APA. Another thing that is really good, Cheryl, I'm just taking some minutes because I really would like to show them all. Yeah, sure. Guys, this is a really good website if you're studying from home, or even here, not just one, or even here at campus. Go to Google. Good. This is a very good website. And type Howl. H-O-L-L.
So just put them on the board.
Yes. Howl. And then you go to Massey University and click APA Interactive. So you have a book, a journal article, web page, newspaper, magazine, report, and so on. And let's say you want a book like you just asked, with 5 authors. Go down here and scroll down. And published, let's say it has no year, which is really difficult for books. Let's say year. It's the 3rd edition, 2nd edition. It was published in New York City, New Zealand City somewhere, and internet here. Okay?
Cut and paste it.
Oh, that's cool. Yeah.
And then you have the example here. And then you have an example of in-text citation. How to paraphrase quotations source within a source. So you have the 3 examples of in-text citation. And you have other information here. So this is a very good website. We are not going to use... Do you want to do a little exercise with Cheryl? We'll leave Cheryl's book for if you want to ask at the end of the session how to do an in-text citation, a reference list of that book, and I can work with you in little groups for us just to do that in 3 minutes. Okay? Thank you for your attention.